one of the most notorious of worms, this New Guinea flatworm. It is an invasive species which has spread to many continents after it was noticed in New Guinea, hence the name. And this is a badass worm for the reason that it is highly voracious and it just devours invertebrates as if it has got no limit to an appetite. This worm has spread to many a continent and has threatened the native mollusk species there, for it feeds on them, the garden slugs and smaller mollusks, at times even earthworms. So when I found it, I just got this plan to see how it does so, how it goes about hunting. And this worm is known for having the tetrodotoxin. And so what I'm going to do is, I have just found an earthworm, and I will be, this is the earthworm that I found, which I have brought about here, and I'll be bringing these two in proximity and see how interactions happen. So here's that worm, and here I bring the earthworm and see what it does. What happens? Okay, so it's on the other side of the face. Though an earthworm is harmless to touch, but still I'm just not doing so. Let's see, now they are in quite proximity. This time I'll be a little more closer. The flatworm seems not inclined for a hunt presently, but let's wait. I'm sorry for this background noise. There's some construction happening somewhere nearby. I may be looking quite inconsiderate person doing something which is unethical by forcing the death, possible death of a creature. But then it's only for the sake of a better understanding of how this worm really notoriously infamous. Why did it jump so fast? Was it bitten? Oh, hi Nitesh. There is an ant. Bring it back near this. It's a forced hunt. It's like feeding this dreaded creature. But one thing, apparently, what I'm noticing is that the earthworm has gone a little sluggish from its previous high state of activity. Maybe it's just a assumption that I'm making. I'm not very sure. This is a nice encounter presently. So far, we haven't seen the Guinea worm interested in this earthworm, and maybe there could be some reason behind it. Perhaps it's not in the mood of really eating something, or maybe some other reason. But then we just wait and watch. These two are very slow moving creatures, though the earthworm comparatively moves at a faster rate. headphones. Okay, so the closest approximation has been not made good use of by the Guinea worm. We still wait. Excuse my handshakes. I'm in a very awkward situation here. Meanwhile, I'll tell a little more about this Guinea worm. So, this Guinea worm, now I have the headphone, probably the voice quality would improve. This Guinea worm has been known to be a devourer of smaller invertebrates, especially mollusks and small slugs in the garden. And it has been known to devour and even make local extinctions of such smaller creatures. Recently, France uh, had a presence of this worm and it declared it as a disaster, and immediately mechanisms were being made so as to contain the spread of this worm. But now that we know this worm has spread to many parts of the globe from where it originated, its origin is said to be New Guinea, and it has now become notoriously uh, known in many other parts of the globe. This worm contains a deadly poison called tetrodotoxin, which we also note that it occurs in the figo fish. Uh, I must say I'm a little disappointed with the way this interaction is happening. I was of the idea that being notoriously voracious, this worm would immediately start its attacks, but it has not shown any interest by far. And the earthworm seems to move along without much botheration. So again, I'll bring this earthworm in proximity with this New Guinea worm and see if again is there any interest. If some interest is shown, pretty declining mode. So this earthworm seems to be in a position that probably a lucky one. It'll die some other day. I'll just give it a few more minutes. This interaction, another few minutes. If something violent occurs, Still, the flatworm seems uninterested in devouring such a juicy earthworm. Once again, we shift it back. This is getting interesting. The earthworm is probing under the flatworm. The flatworm doesn't seem much moved by that. All right, so oh, there was a big degree of jerking by the earthworm, as if something bit it. Could be an ant, or maybe that worm. Maybe the worm. I'm not very sure. But had the worm bit it, it would have tried to capture it also. And it seems unmoved. The flatworm seems unmoved. And the earthworm goes about. Now the earthworm is a little. Uh, is it? Is it unable to move or what is happening? I'm not sure, but some change has appeared in the earthworm's movement pattern. Maybe it's not getting firm grip. The flatworm still lying around doesn't seem to be in a hurry to follow the earthworm. But the earthworm is trying to move, but its movements are becoming a little slow, probably, compared to its previous speed of movement, and it's probably not getting a good grip. Is that the reason? The earthworm is slowing down. For sure, it is slowing down. Its activity has declined to a great extent when we compare it from the previous actions. Yeah, the earthworm is slowed. I think that the earthworm has been bitten by the Guinea worm, and as a result, its body has become paralyzed, as is known by the actions of tetrodotoxin, and the earthworm has gone quite still. Now we see some movement in the flatworm. All right, seems a little interesting now. Things are getting a little cranky, probably. Okay, so the earthworm has become quite still. And the flatworm is now showing some movements. The earthworm is as good as dead, if I may say so. And the flatworm, though it's not following the earthworm as such, surely the earthworm is paralyzed completely. It's not showing any signs of movement, though it should be still alive if it is paralyzed. Yes, the earthworm is still alive. Its body is showing some slight, um, so to say, spasms. The muscles are trying to make a movement, but it is ineffective now. They've become quite ineffective. This seems a little weird. Okay, so I've got a good focus on the earthworm probably now. You can make out with the change in in this reflected light that it is trying to make some movement, but it is quite unable to do so. And if we focus on the earthworm, the flatworm now, I'll put it at a different angle. I'll go and fetch my tripod and just let it be like this. So to see if something is interesting, some interesting things are happening. So this is the earthworm, which had been moving a little while back. This earthworm was bitten by this Guinea flatworm, and immediately when it was bit, it jumped, wriggled a bit, and then it tried to move, but its movement slowly became out of action, out of effort. Now it has become completely still, though small convulsions are happening in the body as such, but it is as good as, I would say, dead. If not completely dead, as good as dead. And the flatworm is probably waiting. And so are we. But thus, if as we see, the flatworm isn't too much in a hurry to consume its prey. Maybe it was not exactly in the mood to hunt, and it was a forced feeding tried upon it, but we are not very sure. Okay, the earthworm is slowly now showing signs of movement. The interior part of the body is again now anterior part is moving slowly and surely. So it just woke up from a kind of a slumber. Wow, this is fascinating. This is remarkable. Oh, goodness, I've never seen something like this before. The earthworm became paralyzed for a few minutes and is now back in its movement. So, uh, what do we deduce out of this? It sure had become very immobile and is now moving away. And the flatworm is still uninterested. This has been a wonderful interaction between two organisms. Now the earthworm is moving quite rapidly. I think once more we should try the same thing. Once more. Some So again I'll do the same. I'll pick up this worm, bring it closer to this flatworm and see what happens if they get into any interaction again. The thicker one is the earthworm, the thinner one is the flatworm. The flatworm is known to feed upon these little invertebrates, especially on mollusks, but it even severs the earthworms at times. So we had seen that a little while back this flatworm had given a small bite to the earthworm, rendering it paralyzed temporarily. We'll see again if it is done, if it gets the same treatment. The flatworm just let it go. Didn't bother much. So once again, we repeat it. This could be a little uncanny of me trying this bit. Bitten again? Probably bitten again. We'll wait and see if the earthworm goes a little sluggish. Alright, again the earthworm is showing similar signs as it was showing earlier. It is unable to move that smoothly as it used to, and the movements have become kind of localized. Okay, this is something uncanny. Earthworm is a little. What do we say? What do we call this behavior of the earthworm? Surely it is showing some sluggishness and a little dizziness, maybe a little disoriented, though it is trying to move, but it is not getting a good grip, probably, or is unable to apply too much required force, as much force as is required to propel it. We'll just wait and see if it stays still for a while, as it did in the previous bite. When it was bitten previously, it went after a little bit of similar sluggishness, it became completely immovable for a while, as if it went into a sudden sleep. Let's just wait and see what happens now. Maybe the effect would be a little less because it has been primed with the same kind of chemical in the body in the previous bite. This is getting a little cranky. All right. Ah, okay, okay. So again, the earthworm has become visibly, visibly, and significantly much constricted or restricted in its movement. While the flatworm, this fellow, sits in peace. It is not showing much movement. This earthworm is now writhing around, unable to propel itself, though the body is showing signs of movement, but probably they are not organized or they are uh, not adequately powerful to propel it. The surface, it's not that the surface is not giving it a grip. It had been moving very well a while back. So, uh, what do I deduce out of this interaction which has happened by far? I must say that the first thing that I was expecting was, since this Guinea flatworm is so notorious for its voraciousness, and its being a hunter, I was expecting that it would immediately get into the hunt mode and get a grip of this earthworm when it finds it nearby. But I was disappointed. Secondly, uh, the bite that has happened, the previous bite, okay, now the earthworm is showing some stronger movements. Now the movements have become visibly stronger, and it's probably oriented towards one particular way of movement. I think we still have some time before I leave them at their own destiny. I will just once more bring the earthworm in very close proximity with the flatworm and see what happens. Okay, so here I go. This, my dear friends, is a top view of things. Okay, okay, has it got it? The flatworm seems to have got a hold of the earthworm now. Yes, for sure. No, it has let it go. What exactly is happening here? The earthworm is becoming sluggish once again. The body is giving up. It's not moving that vigorously. Okay, so the earthworm is almost done for good. All right, yes, the earthworm is dead, if not completely, but yet. This is an earthworm, this is a flatworm. The flatworm is probably hunting the earthworm. All right. Let's just wait and see what happens next. This flatworm, pointed by this yellow part of this leaf, has bitten this earthworm, which has now become very still, probably paralyzed. And I'm not sure whether the flatworm is interested in feeding upon it. We just wait. Okay, so what has happened further, I'm not sure. Phone is running out of charge. So there is no doubt that the earthworm is dead. But the flatworm still is not heading to eat it. For the sake of size comparison, I would just bring this pen. This is a ubiquitous pen. the uniball, add gel uniball. I'll just let it be. So now you get an idea, a much fair idea of the size of these creatures. The earthworm is dead. The flatworm is just lying by. It is still uninterested, disinclining the food. It has unwantedly hunted, I would say. Probably it was not interested in hunting it. And that's why we haven't seen much aggression on the part of the flatworm. Okay, now the earthworm is moving again. It's not dead, friends. It just made a jerk. What a fighter. So the earthworm is regaining consciousness. Probably, yes. Now again, after a few minutes of being high and stoned, probably it's moving again, gathering its strength. It had just moved, I'm sure. Or was it just a muscular spasm which caused it to... okay, now again, it's moving slowly. You can see the apical part, the anterior end. We'll wait for another 5 minutes and see if the earthworm regains consciousness. Yes, you can see it's slowly and surely showing some movements. So this is the last time I allow it to get stoned. This time it survives, it goes free, goes back to the garden, burrows back in the soil, and lives the entire life, probably remembering this day when it got bitten by this little flatworm and got stoned twice. The flatworm is still uninterested in capturing and overpowering its prey. And the earthworm is slowly now moving, gaining consciousness. The anterior part has moved. The body is now moving, very well moved. I'll remove the pin. Oh, okay. So the earthworm is now regaining consciousness and has started moving. The flatworm is not approaching it any further. The earthworm is now moving slowly. I don't know whether it will be bitten again, but if it gets, it will be One lucky worm. Oh, it got bit again because it shook violently. Probably got bit. Probably got bit. It has been a rough day for this little earthworm, for sure. And it emerges as the winner. What was that? Oh, it's going back towards the worm, to the flatworm. I'm not sure. It may get another smitting bite and get high once more. Maybe it is addicted. Maybe, just maybe. So, in these approximately 50 plus minutes of interaction between this little flatworm, which is half the size and half the dia of this earthworm, we have got two occasions when the flatworm put a bite on the earthworm, and after the bite, the earthworm got stoned, paralyzed for a temporary paralysis, and thereafter regains consciousness and just slithers away, rather crawls away. So there have been two good bites on the earthworm, and the flatworm is, we can be sure, is quite uninclined to convert that earthworm into a meal. Slowly the earthworm is passing by and leaving the flatworm in its own leisure to say. This earthworm sure has a story to tell when it meets its friends. I'll pick it up from here and put it back in the soil in the garden where it can dig in wherever it prefers to. And I now just pick it up and transfer it to some garden grass. So I'll pick it up on this leaf. This little earthworm quite had a life. It got bitten by a flatworm twice, got stoned, and is now back moving. Now it's getting dark, so I let it go back in the grass. Here. Go, my friend. You had a tough day today. And as for our flatworm, it still is lurking around the same way it was when we left it. I shall be transferring this fellow also back to the grass. Let me do that. I'll bring the leaf again. Here is the leaf. So now I'll be even transferring this little worm, so notoriously bad, but it has been a good one by far. It did bite the earthworm twice, and the earthworm got stoned on both the occasions. And now we'll leave this also in the grass, somewhere nearby. Maybe if the earthworm is addicted by its potent neurotoxin, it would prefer to get another bite. So that's all, folks. It was a fascinating observation by this evening. That's my birdhouse. So goodbye for now. Maybe we will try to get some more reasons. So it was a good observation by us that we did. An earthworm getting bitten twice by a flatworm. And these all events were happening when I was preparing my camp stove, and it just happened to find this little guinea worm somewhere here. And then I just wanted to see how voraciously it hunts or feeds on its prey. So I got this earthworm. The earthworm got bitten twice by the flatworm, and on both the occasions it got paralyzed, kind of didn't die. It got paralyzed, kind of stoned, and then after a few minutes it regained its consciousness and started moving. So after two such stony events, the earthworm has been released back in its natural habitat, where it probably has some fascinating stories to share with its friends. So thank you, friends, for being with me on this little expedition that we did. Probably something fascinating will be found soon again. I'll share with you. Keep streaming. Bye.